Hey Ornette,
What's up, bro?
you all messed up inside.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man?
Who invited this nigga?
Get your ass on.
The Shape of Jazz to Come is an album of mythical proportions and drama. Jazzwise magazine ranked it as the third best album of all time, while the bebop drummer Max Roach showed how much he enjoyed the album through stalking and harassment. The album shook the 1950s and 60s New York jazz establishment, receiving a passionately ambivalent response from haters and real music enjoyers. The man behind the album would be none other than the controversial Ornette Coleman. Ornette Coleman was born in Fort Worth, Texas in 1930. The 1930 census showed that only 13% of the population was made up of African American people. Only 9 years before Ornette was born, a series of violent protests against industries in Fort Worth resulted in multiple African American people being lynched. To further complicate his upbringing, his father died when he was 7. He grew up in a segregated time and place in US history that defined his further musical ideology. His musical education started on tenor and alto sax, playing in his high school band, which he was rumored to be kicked out of for improvising during a march. After his sax was destroyed in a show in Baton Rouge in 1949 while touring with a traveling band, he picked up his signature plastic Grafton saxophone, which he would play for the rest of his life and would be featured in his album The Shape of Jazz to Come. In 1957, he met people who valued and shared his musical philosophy while in Los Angeles after the traveling band he worked with broke and dispersed. So what was so controversial about Ornette's music? To answer this question, you need only listen to his music. Ornette's melodies are haunting and removed from traditional bebop theory. Instead of playing scales or even chords, his methodology and philosophy was to equalize the playing field for all aspects of music, as he says himself. Harmony, melody, speed, rhythm, time, and phrases all have equal position in the results that come from the placing and spacing of ideas. This is the motive and action of harmolodics. The Shape of Jazz to Come was unique in a few aspects relating to the harmolodic musical philosophy. There was no piano in his music, which removed some of the rhythmic and harmonic aspects of his music. Piano was always present throughout all jazz eras, from ragtime to bebop to modal jazz. The removal of this crucial genre-defining element made Ornette's music unique. However, it wasn't a pioneering move, as Jerry Mulligan had been doing this for almost a decade before The Shape of Jazz to Come was released. More than that, each of the musicians in Ornette's quartet almost seemed to be playing their own musical ideas as long as they serviced the music. The structure of his pieces allowed the musicians to express what they wanted within the context of the piece. Take this example of the head of Lonely Woman, perhaps the most famous tune on the album. The drums are playing an incredibly fast swing, while the bass plays a line that sings its own painful, simple drone-like countermelody that follows the rhythmic movement of the melody. Both Don Cherry's trumpet and Ornette Coleman's saxophone play an octave unison melody, but the contrast between the timbres of the instruments clash so much that they sound like they're playing two separate melodies. The album itself was recorded in Radio Recorder's studio in Hollywood, California. It was likely recorded using a combination of both RCA 77DX and RCA 44BX microphones. It is noticeable on vinyl that the drums are quieter than remastered versions found on streaming services. This is because at the time, studios usually only used one overhead mic to capture the sound of an 8-track mixer, meaning that only a limited number of tracks could be mixed at a time. The timing of The Shape of Jazz to Come releasing in 1959 was truly prophetic. A new era of jazz was about to take the establishment by storm, and what was once a genre defined by distinct eras diverged into multiple different subgenres of music that had their unique characteristics all under the umbrella term jazz. Legends like bandleader and trumpeter Miles Davis began to explore modal jazz, while Dizzy Gillespie fell in love with cool Latin Afro-Cuban tunes. Charlie Parker, one of Ornette's inspirations and pioneer of bebop, marked the end of the bebop era with his death in 1955, although his influence was still found everywhere in jazz.
The method for playing bebop had become stronger than the creativity of bebop. I could play and sound like Charlie Parker note for note. I realized that regardless of how advanced I was going to play bebop, I was only still going to play it from the method. So I abandoned the idea that I was going to be a very successful bebop player. I accepted the fact that, okay, now that I've observed and resolved this, now where to go? And then I remembered when I first got my horn, I was playing ideas without having to relate to anything. I thought that maybe if I did this, perhaps I would find something.
Armed with his bebop knowledge, Ornette inspired other musicians, most famously John Coltrane, into a different philosophy who would later coin harmonics or free jazz. Other musicians weren't so happy with Ornette's music, however. As mentioned before, bebop pioneer and drummer Max Roach reportedly punched Ornette after a show during his residency at the Five Spot Cafe in New York, as well as stalk and berate him outside his apartment in the early hours of the morning. Miles Davis called him all screwed up inside, and even Thelonious Monk, one of Ornette's influences, said there's nothing beautiful in what he's playing. However, he also had people who admired his unique musicianship and talent. It's like organized disorganization, or playing wrong right, and it gets to you emotionally, like a drummer. That's what Coleman means to me. The Shape of Jazz to Come is a prophetic album that challenged the boundaries of jazz and shaped what we now regard as avant-garde. Ornette Coleman's music emphasized improvisation without a reliance on the bebop method, and was an expression of his character and his beliefs with almost an indifference to what was regarded as great jazz. Although there were many mixed opinions about his music, he ultimately had a massive influence and contribution to jazz. Since then, he has been recognized as the father of avant-garde jazz and received a Pulitzer Prize for his album titled Sound Grammar in 2007.